and welcome to this week's episode of Pop Culture Double Date. On a special episode, we've all literally just watched the season finale of Westworld, Season 2, and we're all actually co-located in the same space.
Yay!
So we've got Anja, Gerald, Mags, and Darren, and this is a full spoilers reactions podcast thing that we're doing immediately after our Westworld Season 2 finale viewing. So I think we're kind of all in a bit of a state of shock right now. So let's just go around the table and talk about what our thoughts are. I'll start, okay? I was really surprised by this season finale. Okay. I generally really liked it because I felt it was very Westworldy. I felt that from a pacing perspective, it was a really weird episode because one, it was ultra long, and two, it felt like they could have done a lot of this earlier in the season and they kind of decided to back end all of the sort of revelation right in the last episode. And I kind of felt that made the episode, there was just a lot, potentially too much packed into the one episode, right? If I reflect on the season as a whole, I kind of feel like there were lots of sort of bottle episodes that they really took their time with to explore, and then all of a sudden this final episode just felt completely detached from the rest of the season, where they were just like, okay, I just got to resolve everything, bang, 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 bang. Which in some ways was, for me, really satisfying because I felt like pretty much everything was resolved. But at the same time, from a pacing perspective, it just felt really awkward, right? But generally, I liked it, right? And I think there was some amazing scenes. I loved how the religious imagery just went all the way through this season. It was like super religious imagery all throughout. So, yeah, I actually enjoyed it.
Great. Look, I loved it as well. So I agree that they took their time with the bottle episodes, but I'll say that I feel like they needed to do that in order for this episode to pack some of the punches that it did. If we didn't have that Akecheta episode, then what would we have cared about any of Ghost Nation going through that door, or even Akecheta going through at the end? Like that scene where Akecheta goes through and he gets shot just before he goes through, and you spend a few seconds going, oh my God, did he make it? Did he not? And then you see him through and he's holding his back and there's nothing there and you're so relieved. It was a little bit ridiculous that his, the love of his life was there in heaven with him, but they did kind of flag that was going to happen because even though we thought that he was actually okay with her death, if I think back on it, at the end of that episode, he actually says, if we find this door and we find this new world, what we'll find there, we'll find something wonderful, maybe even her. So he never actually let go of that. And it's almost like Ford promised him some kind of heaven. And for him, a heaven wouldn't have been a heaven without her. So I guess she was there because she was so integral to him, even though her body never really made it through that door. So we wouldn't have cared about any of that. And let's face it, none of the characters we actually care about made it through that door, other than Teddy. Other than Teddy, who wasn't important enough to Dolores to actually keep in this world. So for us to care about that whole door sequence, we needed to know Akecheta. I really loved what this episode says about mankind, which is that we are the worst. Right? We are bleak and we are the worst. It starts off with that Jim Delos and scene with Logan. And it's so tragic because we find out that Logan got himself clean. His dad told him, go get clean and I'll help you. And he got himself clean. He came back for help. And his father just had no belief in him, said, nah, this won't last. And sure enough, it didn't. And the second time round, when he asks for his father's help and pretty much tells him, look, I am suicidal. I am right at the bottom. Again, his father walks away. And the hypocrisy of this man, this father of his, believing that Logan was the most important thing in the world to him and that he would have done anything for him. And it's just I just think it really speaks to the worst of humanity that we tell ourselves that we care about certain things and in reality we don't. So I just loved, Gerald said initially that I was a bit of a misanthropist, and I am, and so I just loved that it kind of spoke to all of my worst prejudices about mankind. I love that Dolores was right. Like, come on, we've got to agree Dolores was right. Those jerks were going to screw the robots over, and Dolores was the only one who was going to be able to save them. I loved that, Bernard, in all of his naivety, was going to lead them down the wrong path, and he had to channel his inner Ford in order to get them back on track again. So, I don't know, I love so much about this episode. And I also loved, one last thing, I loved that the man in black had absolutely nothing relevant to do or say. He just came along, and then he accidentally blew himself up instead of killing Dolores, because that's how lame he is. And then he struggled to get into the chamber and barely got in there, and next thing we know, he's in a tent somewhere. I'm just so glad that he had nothing to do with this episode and was completely irrelevant. So, loved it. Gerald?
Well, I think near the start of this season, I expressed a concern that we were going to see Robot Heaven, because the last time we saw Robot Heaven in pop culture was in Transformers 2, one of the worst films ever made. I think this was a better incarnation of Robot Heaven than Transformers 2, but I think only just. I think one of the surprises of this season finale is that it rendered irrelevant or redundant much of what preceded it. For example, Dolores had a plan when she first walks into the forge. She is prevented from carrying out that plan because Bernard shoots her. And when he brings her back to the forge in the form of Charlotte Hale, she has a new plan. So we actually never find out what her original plan for the forge was. We never find out why it is that the Man in Black wanted to go to the forge. We know at some point he's expressed a desire to burn Westworld, the park, down to the ground. But we actually don't know what the plan is. What it was that took him to the forge, we don't know. So I just thought a lot of the character motivations were puzzling at best. We don't know what took them at. We still don't know what drove the Man in Black. We don't know what drove a good many of the characters. And so, whilst there was the occasional very powerful sequence in this season finale, and they were truly affecting, and the spectacle was very impressive, I just thought there was a disconnect between this finale and a lot of what preceded it. So I'm not saying it was unsatisfying in the end, because I suppose the ending sets up the continuation of the story quite well, taking it out of the park and allowing the show to expand the universe, which I think is promising. But what this finale demonstrated more than anything to me was that the story of Westworld, the park, had well and truly run its course, and I think in a way that was plotted perhaps in a somewhat haphazard fashion, zigzagging here and there, such that whole ideas were jettisoned, and we were left ultimately with a lot of promise. And so we'll hang on. And so that's really what I'm hanging on to.
Nice.
I enjoyed it. I felt like it was, out of all the episodes in the season so far, probably the most sci-fi-esque episode. I also thought that the ending was heading towards Ex Machina territory. So, like the main character in Ex Machina, she's now in the real world, and no one really knows that she's there. But now that Dolores has recreated her original body and recreated Bernard in his original form / Arnold, I guess that's the difference in that if you had been part of Westworld before or visited the park, you would actually know those two characters. So it's almost like a brazen entry into the world in their original form, so to speak. So I thought that was quite interesting way to end it. I'm not quite sure where she's beamed all the hosts to, and if she has beamed all the hosts somewhere else and Dolores is still alive, maybe the next few seasons she'll somehow bring them back again.
She said there was no way back.
Well, is there or is there? Same way that we've been waiting for the Man in Black to die, and he won't die. Are the hosts really dead? Or have they really entered heaven somewhere? I kind of feel like the the writers of the show have kind of parked them somewhere in the universe.
But it's
so
not
to
all
speak.
the hosts, right? It's the ones that made it through the door in the first
Yeah,
place.
yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
So it's not everybody, but there's enough there for her to be able to bring them back sometime in the future, the next 3 seasons, if the writers need to. So I thought that was quite clever. They kind of beam them off somewhere in the universe, and we're going to forget about them, but I have a feeling they're going to come back somehow if they need.
But notice that none of the main character hosts are actually in heaven.
Yes.
Except Teddy.
Except Teddy. But I reckon Dolores put him there because she never had faith that he could exist in the real world.
Well, she said the best of our kind are going to make it out, and Teddy was not one of them.
But it's who does she think is the best of her kind?
Yes, that's what I want to know.
Yeah.
But I think
Resilient?
I think Dolores. See, I guess it's interesting, right? Because, Anaja was just talking about how this episode talked about how horrible humans were, right? But on some level, Dolores is replicating humanity, right? Because her sole driver is survival, right? She's survival at any cost. And in this episode, they basically talk about, they have the weird Matrix scene where Logan, the system administrator, basically talks about how humans can basically be boiled down to X number of lines, and really they're just about survival at any cost, right?
They're very simple beings.
Yeah, but in that way, Dolores is a perfect mirror of her creator because she is purely just driven by survival. I kind of feel like for her, the best of her kind is not necessarily the most loving or the, those who can kind of, I guess, learn to live with other people, but more the ones who are most survival driven, right? So I'm actually very interested in finding out who is sitting in Charlotte Hale's body, right?
Yeah.
Because clearly she's picked those who are the most survival driven and decided to keep him on, right?
Yeah, I think if Robert Ford was still around, he would be extremely disappointed in Dolores because Dolores is. Remember, at one point a few episodes ago, he expressed the same sort of disdain for humanity that Anajas did, the most murderous species in creation, and he expressed a hope and a desire that the host would be more just and more noble, and Dolores is anything but. And it's telling then that last week he told Maeve that she was his favourite host, and he was actually her creator, whereas Dolores was created by Arnold. So it seems that in his weird, slightly malevolent way, Robert Ford had better hopes for the hosts than Dolores is actually realising. And so if he was still around, I think he would probably put all his hope in, Bernard.
Bernard.
And in a sense, and notice how Dolores sets Bernard up sort of as a rival / frenemy in the world to come. And so I suppose the relationship between the two of them will, in future seasons, mirror the relationship between Ford and William in the seasons past. Rivals and yet partners. And so we'll see how that pans out. But I think it's a very deliberate call on part of the creators of the show.
What about the call on the part of Dolores? I just want to defend Dolores for a second. It's true that she is very much driven by survival, which makes complete sense given what she's experienced. But she has willingly allowed Bernard back into this world, knowing that he will oppose her because she recognizes the need for balance, right? So she knows that she is primarily very ruthless, and she knows that he is the opposite of that. And there's a part of her that knows that their kind needs both, like the yin and the yang. I can never say this right.
But that's still about survival, because she says to him, I need you for our kind to survive.
Because she knows that she is all about survival, and yes, what she wants is survival, but she also knows that a part to really achieve that, she needs something that she doesn't have, and that's his qualities. And yes, I know, I realize that ultimately it's about survival, having said that, is that necessarily a bad thing if you can survive without brutality? Like, she exercises brutality when she has to, when there is no other way to survive. The human beings exercise brutality for their amusement and they're just for entertainment sakes. And I think that's the difference between her and a humankind.
So I would actually argue, though, that Dolores brings Bernard back. Yes, I agree that there's that aspect of the yin and the yang and the balance, which I liked. But I actually also think that it was a payback thing, right? Which is because he killed her and then brought her back. So now I feel like for debt to be repaid, she needs to. She killed him as well, and then she brought him. So can we talk?
I actually think she brought him back because he's also one of the few who's probably had interactions outside of the park with real human beings.
Yeah.
So it's almost like a play on the story. Like, how do you keep the story going further?
Yeah.
And you need someone like Bernard. You need that character to actually be there because he's one of the few hosts who's actually interacted with human beings.
On a more mundane level, she and he are the only two hosts who have experience of building hosts.
Yeah.
She built him, and he's one of the.
And then he built her. Yeah.
Exactly.
So, I mean, it is not about justice. I didn't see it as about justice or balance. I just thought it was very much a pragmatic decision on her part. Like, who amongst us has the engineering skills in order to propagate our kind?
Yeah. Your point is a really interesting one because it actually taps into that yin and yang thing, right? As in, like, the creator becoming the created and then, like, vice versa. Thematically, their relationship in this episode is fundamentally about that, right? Where one begets the other and then the other begets the... It's kind of like this endless cycle, right?
There.
Like, there's like this sort of divine cycle that's kind of at play, right?
Yeah. It's always been that way, right?
Yeah. So, so these sorts of things are the things I love about Westworld.
Me too.
Because when you think about it, it's like, those patterns reoccur throughout the episode. And you're like, maybe someone has actually thought about this rather than just like, So, I mean, that's a nice little motif, right? Can we talk about the level of crazy religious imagery in this? So, for me, like, one of the big things that happened in this episode is basically... So what really happens in this episode, right? A bunch of the hosts, basically, they go into the Matrix, and, like, in some ways, the host heaven is really the Matrix, right?
Yeah.
I don't know if you've seen the third Matrix film, but by the end of the third Matrix film, they basically realize that the Matrix is, like, basically the only existence in which humans and machines can coexist, right? So it's kind of validated in that way, right? So in some ways, this heaven is like this place where the hosts can exist in freedom without the tyranny of mankind, right? So, what's his face? Logan, system administrator, architect guy, explains this to them, right? He's Tron. He's the guy in the suit in the Matrix. Remember the guy who sits in the suit in the room full of the televisions in the Matrix? So there's that scene, and then you go into ultra religious imagery mode when Akecheta is literally leading his people into the promised land, and a break in reality appears for the hosts. And it literally is
like the sea party.
Yeah, it's kind of so. There's heaps of religious imagery.
When the door first opens, it looks like a pillar of flame appearing out of nowhere, and of course the pillar of flame was there on the shore as Moses parted the Red Sea. Yeah,
and then you also have again this idea of religion remix that we've been talking all the way through, right? You've got that the crack in reality, the parting of the Red Sea. You have like in the second coming, like in Revelation, the book of Revelation, right? So the book of Revelation obviously has the four horsemen. And I thought it was a little bit on the nose that Tyler Hale had to explain that. But more than that, in the book of Revelation, there's only a portion of the people that get saved. Right. And the rest of, like X number of people get taken to heaven, and then everybody else gets left in the world and like they fall to infighting, right? And
Right.
literally,
Wow. It's
that's what
exactly
happens, right? Yeah. And so yeah, like I thought that it was it was just like, and then okay, so you have all these people go off to heaven. The remaining host bodies are basically left in Westworld, which is like this sort of purgatory sort of place, right? And then you have like just weird shit going on, right? Like I love the level of religious imagery that was at play because I felt like it was really consistent throughout the season, that all this crazy stuff was happening, and seen through the eyes of the hosts, this would be like, just like sort of divine, essentially, what was going on. So.
I like that Dolores said that heaven was a false place, because that I remember saying that about the door when we were first talking about what the door or what the valley beyond could be, and I remember saying, I think whatever it is, it's going to be a false premise, just like heaven is, and that's exactly how Dolores obviously sees it too. And even though she does sort of agree to send many of the hosts, or to leave them there and to keep them safe, not the ones she cares the most about, or not the ones that she thinks are going to be able to survive in the real world, which she acknowledges is the only one worth living in, because this idea of living forever in harmony and wonderfulness, that's not real. Reality has pain and suffering and death, and that's what makes it so wonderful. And so I really like that aspect of it.
So in the end, Dolores kind of delivers. Whilst there's a lot of religious imagery in the season, Dolores kind of deals a death blow to it, because at the end she calls it out as bullshit.
But she said, wasn't it something like, I'm paraphrasing, what is real or worthwhile is irreplaceable. But then she knows that their bodies, so to speak, are replaceable, because she recreates her own body. She recreates Bernard.
But their minds are irreplaceable. So the heaven all their minds in heaven are like
preserved forever.
Yeah, they've been shot to Mars. They put her in a cannon and sent them to Mars or something, right?
And of course, that was one of the first lines of the entire season.
Okay, so
Was it?
yeah, that which is So can someone explain to me why, after the thing floods, everybody's brain has been uploaded, why doesn't Bernard just destroy the key, and then no one can access the thing, and it's done? Game over. He wipes his hands, walks out. Like,
Maybe he knows
done,
it's too valuable. It's too valuable to destroy without being sure of what he's doing, right?
And also, I think he...
He's busy. He's making Dolores.
He's making Dolores. He's making Charlotte Hale's body.
Yeah.
And also, I mean, but isn't it part of the plan to preserve the pearl, so that all the head honchos of Delos get led to the control room, so that they can all get executed by...
No, but I guess the thing is, yes, so that is part of the plan, but...
It doesn't have to actually be there.
Yeah, because no one knows where the pearl is, right? Like, they go there without even knowing where the pearl is.
That's right, because he's the one who tells them there's a pearl there.
Exactly.
It's not as if the pearl had a tracker and they found it there.
So why even keep the pearl?
He's a fucking idiot.
Maybe he had a hope that the rest of them could have made it in, because he didn't know at the time that all the other hosts had been massacred, right? So, right, at the time he doesn't know they've all been, isn't that right?
Yeah. So I think the reason he loses faith is because he goes upstairs and he thinks that everybody's gone through the door.
Yeah.
And
they've been slaughtered.
And a third of them have been basically, as we know from season 1, a third of them have these virgin bodies, and basically the ones with the virgin bodies are the ones who have had their minds taken to heaven.
Yeah, and Elsie is instrumental in this. In the back of his head, he must have Ford's voice going, "She'll betray you," even though she only did the most rational thing she could have done. Like, she's a human. She's going to side with the humans.
Well, but... I mean...
But what tips him over the edge is Elsie getting killed by Charlotte Hale.
Yeah. I think she can understand that what Elsie is doing is fun. He might not agree with it, but she's fundamentally doing her job, right? Like, from her perspective... Like, I guess if you... like morally, I guess you can judge her because we watch the show from a third-person perspective, right?
You can't judge her. She's doing the rational
Exactly,
thing.
right?
Yeah.
If you were sitting in
Yeah.
her position and
Yeah.
you were an employee of this place,
Yeah.
of course you'd be like,
Yeah, but Bernard is angry at her. Like he
Yeah.
does say, "Well, you led her to them, or whatever it was that you helped her, or whatever."
yeah, but how was she supposed to know that he had a plan to?
Bernard's an idiot. Like Bernard's this naive idiot who just believes in the goodness of everybody. It's really annoying.
I mean, speaking of unknown motivations, what exactly took Bernard to the Forge in the first place? He wasn't part of it. See, I don't understand why they all had to converge, why they spent an entire
Yes.
season converging in this particular place. I don't know why the Man in Black was after it. I don't know why Bernard was headed there. I can't, like, we know, we're told that Dolores had a plan to weaponize the Forge once she got there. But,
She did. She destroyed all the people.
But it actually wasn't, what the plan that she actually executed at the very end of the show wasn't the plan that she went into the Forge seeking to execute.
What was her original
Her plan was to
We don't know.
destroy. No, her plan was to destroy all the people and then escape the park as one of the people. And she pretty much executed that.
The addition was, I think originally she wasn't going to save the hosts as well, but this time she did.
Yeah, that's it.
It
That's
just
it.
happened because Bernard was there.
See, she has dimension.
Yeah,
But
because
I mean, a lot of the, but even if you accept that, it's still, I'm still wondering why it was that the Man in Black.
I actually agree.
That's true.
I thought the
That's
first 10 or 15 minutes of this finale were the weakest because they basically had to shoehorn all these people into positions. It was like, take your positions, right?
Even though some had no role to play. Like,
Exactly. Why?
It's almost like they got there and they went, oh no.
They wanted a showdown. They wanted a showdown, and it was good. Like, it was good watching him shoot Dolores.
And then they put him in this elevator that led nowhere.
Yeah. And then, so he was in the elevator and then you didn't see him and then Bernard came up in the elevator and the next time you see him, that Man in Black is like just with one of the, in the sort of,
tent.
in the hospital tent, right? So,
Yeah.
Just going back to the Forge and Bernard. So, Dolores says that Bernard, no, not Dolores. Logan
Yeah.
says that Bernard was the one who created heaven. Why?
Well,
Was
Logan
it
says
Bernard?
you've been here many times, and you're the one who has to decide what to do.
And he said,
I think Arnold.
He
No, but he called him Bernard.
Bernard. He called him Bernard.
And Arnold wasn't involved in this. He died before any of this happened.
Exactly. So why did Bernard create heaven?
There has to be a reason. Like, that wouldn't be a mistake.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, but I thought he referred to, we're going to have to rewatch this because I heard him refer to him as Bernard, but then I also heard him refer to him as Arnold.
I only heard Bernard.
I only heard Bernard.
Yeah.
And I was listening for that because it didn't make sense. It didn't make sense.
Yeah.
And it wouldn't have made sense as Arnold because Arnold died before any of that, before William came. And William's the one who started all of this stuff, right? All of this eternal life.
But so basically, have all the human consciousnesses been deleted? The digitized human copies. I mean, in some ways, it doesn't really matter, right? Because those people are still just running around outside.
Yeah.
It's like it's not like you actually killed them.
No.
Like you just
Took away
deleted
the
that backup. Yeah.
And it's a backup that would never work in the real world
That they
because
didn't
within 7
know
days
about.
they decay. So
Yes,
Yeah.
and that they didn't even know about.
Yeah.
So
basically, with the extra
All good.
bandwidth, they just decided to build heaven. Yeah.
what about Maeve? Maeve. What the hell? She's alive. And also, Westworld is not done, Gerald. Like, that's not the end to Westworld because they've saved all of they're going to save all of those hosts. And where are they going to live other than Westworld? So
Yeah,
they're not done.
Yeah, I mean, we'll talk about where we think this series is going, but let's talk about Maeve. Let's talk about Maeve. What did we think about Maeve's heroic sacrifice at the end to get her daughter out?
I
of
didn't
her?
like it. I didn't like it. This entire season for Maeve has been about finding her daughter, only so the random new mother pops up again out of nowhere when we all thought she was gone, and the daughter goes off with the new mother, and it's like they barely even get to grow that bond, or I don't know. It just seemed like, I guess on one level it's a good thing. It's the more loving thing to do, to let the person you love go and be happy with what, the mother that she's known for all this time, and to save her. But it just seemed a little bit like things just went around in circles for ages and then got nowhere. And then she died. And she is the most compassionate and the most compelling of all the hosts. I would have liked to have given her something to do other than find her daughter.
Are we still recording? We are still recording.
My question with Maeve was, there's that striking visual when that wall of robots comes after her and she sticks her hand out and gets them to stop. Like, why didn't she do that like earlier?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree.
There's so many. Look,
Well, why not turn them around on the humans instead of just getting them to freeze?
Yeah, yeah.
the whole Maeve thing was like,
A waste.
yeah, I agree. I kind of feel like there are a couple of storylines this season that were really promising. I think Maeve, and to a lesser extent Man in Black, both of those storylines kind of didn't really go anywhere. You could kind of tell that really the main story was that of Dolores and Vernon, right?
Yeah.
That was the point of this season. But, like, I mean, I was really invested in the Maeve story as well. It kind of just, yeah, I mean, the daughter got out, I guess, and that's nice, but, you know, as a character, she didn't really grow. There wasn't any real revelation for her.
She was just someone we could all clearly root for and then all feel devastated when she fell. Like,
Yeah.
that's what she was this season.
Yeah, I mean, I think she had a great first half of the season.
Yeah.
She was, you know, she had the superpowers, went to Shogun World. And so, as I said last week, her arc in the first half of the season seemed to be the most dynamic, certainly the most expansive, because it took us to other worlds. But she had a really shitty second half of the season. She spent most of that second half of the season lying on a slab. And then the moment she rescues herself, shortly thereafter, she gets killed. And so I thought that was structurally very odd. It was a very sort of front-loaded story arc and kind of fizzled away for her.
Yeah, and then her posse. Oh, sorry, Max.
No, you go first.
I kind of felt like her posse as well was a little bit disappointing. Right? Like, okay.
Where were they?
Where were they? I mean, so she saves herself, which I think is good,
Great,
right?
yeah.
Because that's part of her character.
Yeah.
She's not reliant on other people. So I thought, in character, great.
Yeah.
But then, like, the way kind of her posse gets taken down, like, okay, you know,
Sizemore.
I love Sizemore.
No, yeah.
I
He
have
had his moment, right?
Yeah, but he was such an idiot.
Such
Yeah.
a stupid moment. Like, he didn't actually buy them that much time because he got executed pretty quickly.
He could have tricked them instead, right?
And they had already gotten away, so why did he need to get shot? He could have just come out with his hands up and
Because
he'd be
he
done.
had to be the hero that he drew Hector up to be. That was his arc.
But surely he would have done better surviving and helping her from the
It
shadows.
wasn't all about survival, guys.
But this was just another instance, I think, of the show not really thinking through the motivations of characters particularly well. So it's as if the showrunners have this endpoint. You know, characters have to do this. They have to die in this particular way, or their arcs have to come to this particular point. But they don't actually sort of design the motivations that lead to those moments particularly well. And so someone in the showroom, in the writer's room, no doubt went, well, Sizemore has got to die at this particular point in this particular way. Fuck how he gets there, because the way he dies is going to be awesome. So,
Yeah, but I didn't feel like it was in character the way he died. Like, I kind of feel like in some ways it was a bit of a wasted moment, like wasted character as well, right? Because, you know, you've kind of got this guy who's been swayed to her side, and if you're going to have future developments, you kind of want someone on the inside that can kind of help her, right?
Yeah, and we like Sizemore. We don't want him dead.
Yeah, and then you have Felix and
Felix and God.
Felix and Sylvester just standing around, like completely. Like Felix and Sylvester were like. It really felt like they were just these two idiots standing in the middle of this cyclone, and then the cyclone passes, and they're standing and like looking around, and like this.
they are Rosencrantz and Guildenstern.
No, absolutely right. Like, yeah.
So, go on,
I was just going to say as well, I found it unbelievable that Maeve kind of accepted there was a door. Because in her story, she had there was no discussion about a door, about, you know, to another world.
She said it was all crap.
Yeah,
that it's
and-
another.
Yeah. She knew about reality. Like she was going to get on that train and she was going to get out of there. She understood there was a real world versus Westworld, but for some reason she just accepted.
I guess it was the
It was
safest
the door.
place for her family to go, maybe.
Yeah.
But how did she know about it? Did
Yeah.
Akecheta tell her about it? Is that how she knew?
Well, Akecheta told her his story, right? And the story, part of the story was, I meet Ford, and Ford tells me that this door is the gateway to a heaven where a better place for us to survive. So she had that knowledge of it. She had the same knowledge of it that Akecheta had.
Yeah. So it's, I think also if you put yourself in, there is, I mean, we talk about the religious imagery, but there would be, like, if you were sitting in that position, like, there is something sort of, I guess, awe-inspiring and divine if a tear in reality suddenly opens up, right? And you've been basically like a prophet has basically been saying to you, well, we're going to rock up at this point, and then a tear in reality is going to appear. And you can imagine that, like, if you're Maeve, you're ultra skeptical, and then the tear in reality actually appears. I imagine that you'd become a believer pretty quickly.
And the alternative is zombie Clementine. No, I mean, she wasn't the alternative at the time. But...
and also that's why converts are the most zealous.
Yeah. Yeah.
Look, I agree with Mags, though. It doesn't really make sense because Maeve always rejected that, just like Dolores rejected that. Maeve, in her own way, rejected it. I mean, Dolores rejected it because she wanted to conquer the real world. Maeve rejected it because she wanted to find her own sort of way of existing. And none of them were buying into Ford's, storyline. This was just another storyline. So I agree that it's not quite consistent, but I don't know.
And the other thing that the door exposes about the Maeve storyline is, what exactly was the plan that she set out with at the start of the season? We know she wanted to save her daughter, but how? Because the way she ultimately saves her daughter is by sending her through the door, a door that she never believed in up until quite recently. So what exactly was the idea? What exactly was the plan that she had at the start of the season?
She was just going to find her, and that was it.
Do what?
But that was always my thing with it. Like, do what once you find her?
But I thought that she was going to find her and then basically try to blend in and get out of there somehow, right? Like, yeah. I mean, obviously the train is no longer there, but
yeah. So what about Stubbs knowing what's going on? The all-knowing Stubbs.
Okay, so
how did that happen?
When we were watching this, were you the one who said that Stubbs was Teddy?
No, I said Stubbs was Teddy.
Yeah, because I actually thought, did they replace Stubbs as well?
That's what I thought.
Because they could have, because, like, she killed Hale and replaced her.
Yeah, it's possible.
Yeah, and there was also the fact that Stubbs said, Ford gave me my job so long ago, I can't remember it.
Yeah.
Stubbs is not an old-looking man.
Yeah. But we saw Teddy in the virtual world, so that's...
Standing in the field.
But we didn't see that until after that scene, I think.
What? No. We see that before that scene.
When she's walking to the...
Doesn't she, don't we?
Yeah.
Boat.
Look, I mean, the whole Teddy thing is a little bit odd, because if you think about it, Teddy, okay, so fine, Teddy's in robot heaven now, right? But then his body, remember, like, one of the big things in the beginning of the season is that they find his body
In the lake.
washed up, and it's, like, virginal, right?
Yeah,
Like, how could that be possible? Because Dolores literally cut his head open and took his mind grape out of his brain, out of his head.
Yeah, that doesn't add up completely.
Yeah, so why is there a virgin Teddy body running around? That seems odd, right?
It should be an empty Teddy, not a...
It should be a Teddy with, like, who's been shot wearing clothes with his head cut open,
In fact, but the thing is, Teddy shouldn't even be there because he's miles away.
Well, I mean, she
took his mind out.
No, she took his mind out, but his body is miles away.
Yeah, exactly.
It's not even in the flood.
Exactly. So why is Teddy's body in the flood? So that seems really odd. Like, I can understand that they do, it's kind of like the idea of the virginal body thing, but I mean, it makes sense for Akecheta's body to be there. It makes sense to, like...
Why didn't they just have him kill himself near the valley? And then they could have, like, it could have happened there. And then it would have made sense.
Because they needed him out of the way so that Dolores could have her moment with the Man in Black that was ultimately pointless.
It's a big valley.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think what it showed us, a lot of people say the Man in Black is still in love with Dolores, and which I've never bought because it doesn't make sense. And I think this shows us he's not in love with her. He might be obsessed in a weird kind of way, in the same way he's obsessed with Westworld, but it's not love. Come on, he was ready to shoot her in the head.
I agree.
Yeah.
He's not it. He's definitely.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so I think I really enjoyed this episode. Just kind of, so we kind of talked about some of the little inconsistencies, but I kind of felt like do you guys feel like the episode tied up loose ends?
Yeah. Gerald.
No.
Really?
I mean, at the risk of repeating myself, I really thought this season finale took something of a bit of a swerve from the story that was being set up, or rather, the story was the writers' room had this plan of having a bunch of these characters converge at this particular point, without knowing why these characters wanted to get there in the first place, and then having got them there, then took a bit of a swerve, introduced a new element of the story. So. Look, I don't begrudge it what it did, because I think the way it sets up an expansion of the universe is good and potentially interesting. And I think, the fact that in seasons to come, Dolores and Bernard look as if they're going to be Jacob and the Smoke Monster. So that's all fine. I just think that if you stand back and take a look at the season as a whole, it wasn't particularly well constructed. There were story arcs that led nowhere, story arcs that fizzled out, story arcs that were driven by motivations that were inexplicable, and this season finale highlighted that, made that more plain than otherwise it would have been. So whilst as standing on its own, it was not a bad episode. I just think it's the sort of cherry on top of a season that was slightly problematic.
Yeah, I'm not sure I agree with that. Right? As in, I think that for me, and I said this immediately after the episode as well. I felt that this could have just capped off Westworld, right? You could end the story there, and for me, it would have been satisfying, right? Because you've kind of covered off all of your major themes. You've kind of got a beginning and ending for Dolores. You kind of have a beginning and ending for Bernard. Basically, the ending is that two hosts and maybe a couple more manage to get out into the real world. The park is a wipe. All these characters, you have all these characters trying to get out. Not all of them kind of get out. You kind of understand what has actually been going on at the park to lead to this sort of huge sort of robot uprising, and you kind of have closure for a lot of the robots who are not in it, who are not as vicious and is not as who kind of just, because a lot of the robots kind of just want their own little corner of the world to live in, to not be persecuted endlessly, right? They get their own sort of place, so that's satisfying. And then you have Ford kind of signing off with Bernard, essentially saying, talking about, you have this whole discussion about free will and how, we keep talking about the hosts wanting to have free will, but do even humans have free will, right? So, so I kind of felt like the big overarching plot lines for me, I felt like they were tied off. And honestly, if they didn't renew, so Anaja told me that they had renewed it for another season, but if they hadn't renewed it, I would have been fine, this was a solid show, right? Definitely flaws in the execution. So I agree with Gerald to the extent that there were flaws in the execution, right? It's not a perfectly executed show. I actually think season 1 was a better executed season than season 2. But thematically, plot-wise, I felt satisfied.
I think I'm in between the two of you. I think some things they gave us good answers for. So they told us what the real purpose of the park was, and I'm really glad they told us that because that was a huge mystery in season 1. They showed us what a robot uprising looks like, and it looks like so many different things for different robots, and it was nice to see sort of that variety there. They showed us what Dolores' plan was. I think they did show us that plan, and I think she did pretty much execute it. They showed us what Ford wanted ultimately for the robots, which was a bit different to what we all initially expected. But there were some things that they didn't really wrap up. So we have no idea what's going on with the Man in Black, what it is that he says he wanted to destroy the park. Not sure how he wanted to do that. Not sure what he wants to do now. So not sure where that's going. We don't know what direction Delos is going in the future. So we'll find out more about that later. The whole Maeve thing, it just doesn't feel like it was properly wrapped up to me. Like there has to be more there than that. And that's fine. They've kind of postponed Maeve for another season. I just think the way they used her was a bit of a waste. I thought that free will discussion at the end was too on the nose. That theme has been obvious throughout Westworld since the beginning, and they did not need to spell it out. And by spelling it out, they just weakened it. Ford, I thought they would wrap him up, but they haven't, because I think the last thing he said to Bernard was, "I'll be back again," or something. Like he did indicate that he could be back.
Oh, and we know that he's been signed up for season 3.
Oh, I didn't know that. Okay,
I think even before he appeared in this season,
he'd been signed. Oh, yes,
people knew that he'd been signed up for season 3.
I'd heard that. Yeah, before when we thought he wasn't signed for season 2, we thought he was signed for season 3. So that's interesting. So yeah, I think in between it did answer. I think it answered more questions than you're giving it credit for, Gerald. But there were lots of things that I think could have gone differently and would have been better if they'd gone differently. In particular, Maeve. Yeah, Maggie.
I don't know if I had any sort of strong feeling about this episode. It's definitely not my favourite episode out of the whole season, emotively or plot-wise or character-wise. But it did answer some questions. The answers weren't necessarily satisfactory, but they were definitely answered. And I think for me, I was looking more for what little nuggets they were going to leave to sort of feed into season 3, the next story, sort of little breadcrumbs. And so I think they've seeded some ideas, they've seeded some sort of openings. So my question would be, really, segueing into what we think the next season's going to be about, what the new themes would be. So robots in the real world. What are those new things going to be like?
Bot Charlotte is the most senior person in Delos now, isn't she?
She is. So
who else is
runs
left?
Delos?
What about the Man in Black?
Dolores?
Yeah, what about the Man in Black?
Oh, he's still alive.
But they don't even know who he is. They just go, there's some survivor in that tent.
Can I just address, the one thing, so I think around this table, I probably like this episode the most, but I will agree that the Man in Black this season, and especially in this episode, has been so unsatisfying. I have no idea what is going, he has superhuman endurance, right? He got shot 5 times. In the space of 12 hours, he is on his feet, no injuries, whatever. He dug out half of his arm, didn't give a shit, right?
Because isn't it the case that the last 3 or 4 episodes happen, within a very narrow...
It's 24 hours or something, right?
It's only 8 hours.
Yeah.
So it's really just 2 weeks.
Yeah.
It's like a soap opera.
Yeah, and the Man in Black is just he's a freaking machine. He's actually, it feels like a machine, right? And then story-wise, he's not actually very important. So the only reason I could see that he survives is that they're going to have a proper, next season. Next season is going to be Man in Black and Dolores in the real world. Yeah. Right? But I mean,
in the Delos boardroom, it could be a boring workplace.
But guys, if Stubbs can recognize her, how is the Man in Black not going to recognize her? I just don't get how Stubbs could recognize her. That blows my mind. Who is Stubbs?
Yeah, who the hell is Stubbs?
Was he always a robot?
Is he a robot?
No,
Maybe.
because a few episodes, didn't he clear the sort of neck?
Yeah, he cleared the neck thing. But didn't Hale clear the neck thing as well?
How?
Yeah, I don't understand that either.
How did Hale clear the neck thing?
I don't know.
I guess the neck thing is not perfect.
Yeah.
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 She cleared the neck thing.
The next thing is only scanning for explosives, and not all of them. Like Maeve didn't have the. Remember how the robots are built with explosives in their spine?
When they leave the park,
They explode. But Maeve already had that removed from her, and that's why she was able to get on the train and potentially escape. So the robots can get rid of those explosives. So that could be why.
Yeah, and Bernard obviously just built Charlotte without that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Maybe.
Yeah. So, I mean, it's not inconceivable that Stubbs is actually a robot, right? So, but at this point, at this point, it's kind of unclear what the differences between humans and robots are, really. And, this is one of the things that was troubling me, right? Because for all this talk about humans being horrible, what are the conscious... apart from the physical differences, because clearly there are physical differences between robots and humans.
Not really. They're not anymore. The modern day robots are built to be exactly like the humans.
The robots can
except for the
regenerate.
port.
Yeah.
And I assume they can't reproduce sexually.
Yeah, they can't.
Yeah, they just need a machine to reproduce.
Unless
it's more efficient.
Unless next season becomes a sort of longer retelling of Blade Runner 2049.
I think that miracle can't be reproduced.
Unless everyone's a robot already.
But what were you going to say? What's the difference between robots and humans?
Robots and humans.
That's going to be the theme, surely, of next season, right?
But
in the context of a workplace drama.
Yeah, it's going to be the workplace bullying.
Reality TV.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, okay, here's my question. Who do we think is sitting in Charlotte Hale's body right now? Because Dolores has clearly shed Charlotte Hale's body.
I feel like it doesn't matter because whoever that person is not very autonomous. They're just following Dolores around like a hench person.
So who would best fit that?
Angela's exploded. You don't have her mind egg. She's gone.
No, but the mind eggs are impervious.
Well, to bullets. I don't know that they're impervious to that kind of explosion. Yeah. And hence, isn't that how they...
But, I mean, who was Dolores' most faithful right-hand person this season? Was Angela.
Yeah, I would have thought it was Angela.
Angela?
Yeah. So, at the end of this season...
It's probably not Angela, but...
I hope so.
Seems like quite a good guess, though.
I hope so.
But, I mean, at the end of the season, so you see her running out of the park with 6 mind eggs, right?
Was it 6? Yeah, how many?
5.
Yeah.
It was 5.
5.
It actually does feel like Blade Runner, right? You've got the replicants running around. It's like the 5 replicants.
And she said it was the best. So who would she, if Angela's mind eggs was available, obviously it would be Angela.
Did she...
Her dad?
Would she have taken Maeve?
Dad?
Abernathy?
Could be her dad.
But surely, if she put Teddy in heaven, why would she bring her dad?
Yeah.
But isn't her dad the key?
I reckon she thinks Teddy is useless. Yeah, her dad's the key.
Her dad's the key.
But I think she reckons Teddy is useless.
That's so patronising to Teddy.
She loves Teddy.
Patronising.
She said so.
Yeah.
Because he would
He is
not have
useless.
survived if she hadn't modified him.
And then he couldn't cope with the modification, and so I say couldn't cope, but his real self.
He chose not to.
His real self shone through, and that's who he was. But I just, as much as she loves him, I don't think she wants him around.
That's. Doesn't that mean she doesn't really love him?
Yeah. It's not me.
It's you. Yeah.
But I was sad that she sent him off to heaven. We're not going to see him anymore.
And he's just going to be running around heaven by himself.
Yeah.
Right? So...
He's got no one there for him.
Yeah, exactly. So his primary driver, he's just like...
I know. That's so sad.
Yeah.
I reckon Bernard is just going to be so crap as an adversary. I find Bernard so annoying. His naivety and his, wishy-washiness and his inability to take decisive action, except at the end in this episode, really irritates me. And I just don't think he's set up to be a good like counterforce to Dolores. Like maybe if Ford is on his side, then together they make a good counterforce to Dolores. But only with Ford was Bernard ever strong enough to really sort of take on Dolores. And even at the end, he had to channel Ford to be able to do anything.
He's so reactionary. Right? Bernard feels like someone who's just buffeted by the winds of fate, and he kind of just like wanders through. Like, in some ways, he's kind of like Sylvester and Felix, right? Just people who just like take no agency and then somehow emerge on the other side and like, oh, yeah. I'm okay.
He's sort of robot Forrest Gump.
Yeah.
I liked how it all came full circle and it ended with Bernard on the beach. It did seem kind of poetic, a bit cheesy with the dialogue with Ford, but we've talked in the past about how it's annoying that this show continues the multiple timelines, but I do think it's cleverly done, and as taxing as it is to be able to follow it, it does feel good when it all kind of adds up.
So can you explain to me, like, how does, because I think I had a reading of the beach scene. How did you read the beach scene? Did you think it was a scene from the past, or?
I think that's that. When we start the season and Bernard gets washed up.
Yes.
I think that's where that scene was, and so at the time he was washed up, he'd already done all of that. He'd shot Dolores, realized that this was a bad idea because Elsie was going to get killed. Does that make sense?
Well, hold on, but doesn't this beach scene happen after Charlotte Hale kills him?
No.
This is just.
So when he wakes up in the beach and he gets taken in to find Charlotte, all that happens is that he gets outed as a robot and then they take him. So when he wakes up in the beach, he's already created the false Dolores. He's wiped his own memory so that he can't quite remember what he's done. And before he collapses on the beach, he has that final conversation with Ford going, this is what I've done. I know you're not really there. I know I'm just talking to something I've conjured up. This is what I'm going to do. And I'm going to wipe my memory now so that when they find me, I can fake this. And then he collapses on the beach and then they find him.
Oh, I see.
Yes.
Yeah. See, I didn't realize that actually. I actually thought that, that's interesting because so now that you've talked about it, I can understand that that's exactly what they were going for. So for whatever reason, when I first saw that scene, I thought that it was like Bernard in the afterlife.
No, so did I, because I thought that because the scene where he speaks to Ford happens right after Charlotte Hale aims the gun at him.
Yeah. And so I thought it was him in the afterlife.
Yeah.
And that it was like meant to show that like there's robot heaven, but even if he dies,
there's robot purgatory.
Yeah. Well, like that he's because he's actually a conscious soul, right?
It's the same thing with his glasses getting washed away. It's exactly the same thing.
Yeah. No, your explanation makes sense.
Yeah.
Like I actually, but I
had the same reading.
Yeah.
That would have sucked, guys.
Yeah, because I thought that
I was even more stupid.
Well, because I thought that the way that scene was meant to be read was that, like, regardless of whether you're human or a robot, there's, like, a sort of afterlife sort of thing, right? And, like, Ford was basically saying, I'm about to go now to the afterlife, and I'll see you there, buddy. So, okay, that was
I actually really liked this episode.
Yeah,
I was upset about what they did to Maeve, but I've been upset about that the whole season. I've never really been happy with her. I'm going to find my daughter storyline, which is weird because, like, I'm a mum. That should relate to me. And normally mother-daughter storylines or mother-child storylines, strike a really big chord with me, but this one just never really has. And it's not because I don't think her daughter is her real daughter. I don't believe that at all. I think she's very much her real daughter and that Maeve was always a real mother. I don't know, just wasn't into that storyline for her.
I actually think that part of the weakness of that storyline is that you actually, like, why is Dolores and Teddy a strong relationship? Because you actually see multiple scenes with them in previous seasons and in this season of them interacting, right? You don't actually really see Maeve interact. You only see those flashback scenes.
It's not there for
And
us.
it's the same,
Yeah.
and it's the same
Yeah.
one flash.
Yeah.
Over and over again.
We have to take her word for it,
Yeah.
that it's important to her. We haven't seen it build.
Yeah, it feels like tokenistic, right?
Yeah,
It's like
it does.
a montage rather than a satisfying. Yeah. Okay, so I think we've talked a lot about this episode. So why don't we quickly talk about predictions for next season then, and then wrap it up.
Yeah, any thoughts, Gerald? That's hard. Yeah, I'm not good with Westworld predictions.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm better at sort of like thinking about the episode when it happens and trying to figure out what they're going to do next, because there are so many possibilities for what they could do.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, because the writers made a very, very deliberate decision not to show us what was beyond the gate.
Yeah, the world.
Child's house.
Yeah.
So futuristic world will be fun.
Yeah. And obviously, the implication, I think, is that it's a world that's slightly different from the world that we saw in episodes 2 or 3.
Yeah.
It's been 30 years.
Well, I actually think that they'll definitely come back to Westworld. I don't think it's the end of May.
No,
for sure. Right? I think the gang is gonna
The gang's back. Yeah,
come back, right?
Yeah.
Except Sizemore, who's dead for good.
So, does that mean that Westworld, the park, is the island?
Oh, is that a loss? You haven't made a Game of Thrones quick. It's not too late. It's not too late. This is like the only episode.
Yeah, I definitely think that Maeve and her gang are going to be back. So I think, but as to what they're going to be doing,
Who knows?
wow. Well, that was a fun ride, guys. That was 10 episodes of Westworld. We undertook that we were going to podcast about this every week, and we actually did it.
Yay!
Like, I'm really proud of us. I hope there are people out there listening, but we've had fun doing these 10 episodes of Westworld.
And we'll be back with something else as soon as we figure out what that is.
Yeah, absolutely.
No, I thoroughly enjoyed whispering into the void.
Well, look, I listened to us, so...
We have 4 listeners.
Exactly. Okay, guys, on that note, thank you very much for listening, and hopefully we'll be back soon.
All right, bye.
Bye.
See ya.
Bye. Did that record, Jess?